Jospa click sharea, niin mä saadaan toi vähän isommalle. Okay. So, my brand is maybe not as good as Peter's yet, so I present myself as a nerd by design. I'm a programmer at heart. So, I'm married, I have 2 kids. One of them is actually already working for Trimble. He's doing web development. The younger one is still in high school. He's working with VR, so he's very much into, both are very much into technology. And so I started as a programmer in a company called Tekla back in '91, and we were acquired by Trimble, so that I'm leading the technology unit at the Trimble buildings level for the last, let's say, 15 years, or Trimble in 6 years. And I get involved in technology at an early stage. So one example is, back in the days, back in '91, '92, as a student project at the Aalto University, back then it was Helsinki University of Technology, we were working on a web browser. And back then there were 5 web servers in the world. And when we ended the project, there were like 50. And we continued with our daily jobs. There was no startup scene to talk about then. But we already had day jobs, so we continued our work at Tekla at our places and kind of forget about it. We thought that, okay, the web is great, it will be great. A year later, NCSA Mosaic came out, and the rest is kind of history. It became a bit bigger. But there are other things I've been involved with that we were a bit early, but eventually they grew big. And I think this is a project. When I heard Peter talk about this about almost, 1.5 years ago, the first time, I said, I want to be involved in this. So let's see if I bet on the right horse again. So what is Trimble? So our mission is transforming the way the world works. And I mean, this is really a project about that. It's transforming everything from the design, the collaboration, all of that. Trimble is active in 5 big business areas. So Trimble as a company, it's like a mid-size US company, 8,000-9,000 employees. And we do 5 big areas in business. Agriculture, that maybe falls out of this area, but otherwise, heavy civil construction, very much involved. Building construction, yeah. Geospatial, that's when you kind of start your projects, you do laser scanning, surveys, and so on. But then also transportation logistics. It's very much about that. So I think that this project covers like 80% what Trimble is doing. We do software and services for these areas. So how did we get involved? Well, Peter, after starting this kind of, I would say, movement or idea in Estonia, was it in May or June?
May, yeah.
May, yeah. Peter came to an AEC hackathon. And AEC means architecture, engineering, and construction. And he had a presentation there. I was like, okay, Peter was working as a marketing director for Rovio, brand builder. Why is he attending a hackathon for building engineers and software engineers? So he talked about the tunnel. And I said, when I heard the vision, I said, okay, I want to get involved. And I actually raised my hand that, yeah, we want to help. What's the fastest way? Should I bring my shovel? And Peter said, well, jokingly, that, well, if that's the fastest way to do it, then let's use the shovels. And they said, well, if we bring enough Chinese, maybe. And Peter said, well, that's exactly the plan, but maybe not Chinese people, but of course their knowledge and money and technology. People as well, of course. And then around the same time, Trimble was approached by Microsoft. The HoloLens was not on sale in Finland back then, but Trimble had been working with the HoloLens before it became public. So we had a lot of expertise in that area, and Microsoft wanted to do something cool for 2017 using the HoloLens, but they couldn't do it themselves, but they could pay a subcontractor in Finland or a partner in Finland. So of course I said no, because we don't do projects, we do products mainly. Of course we do some projects as well. But then I said, well, what if we would do it as a visualization for this project? We would do this exclusively on the HoloLens. We would show it at Slush. So we did exactly that. So we had this really interesting consortium where Microsoft was paying. Then we had a small startup called Deeptail, Mika Peltola, somewhere in the public. Oh, over there, very close. Actually, my childhood friend. So he just started a company about storytelling using AR and VR. And then Trimble was subcontracting to Deeptail. So it was kind of a new example of new way of working, and it was, I think, a great success. And it actually won the Future of Storytelling prize. And we used the models from Fira that Tero Vannon has been working on. We used Aalto students as well in the first phase, and it was kind of all about the community. So, last week I gave the same presentation in Helsinki roughly, and then I mentioned that, yeah, we are going to offer our tools to the consortium. So today, on our trip over, the good thing with the boat is you have plenty of time to work on your presentations and your MOUs and so on. But of course, it would be nicer if you don't have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to get here to 9:30 or 10. So Trimble and the Finest Bay Area Consortium have signed a memorandum of understanding, and I actually love the date, 18/1/18. So again, a bit of Chinese symmetry in here. So Trimble is offering, we have a collaboration platform called Trimble Connect, kind of what we have integrated into all our products. It's also already commercially available, but we are offering it for free for this pre-planning phase of the project. So everybody who is collaborating in this project can publish their models, collaborate, comment, and we can also publish it to the public. And because this is such a huge product or huge project, we're also offering easy access to or early access to our next generation high-performance technology for visualizing really large models in the cloud, in the web browser. So kind of nice tied back to the browser story I started with. So anyway, that's what we wanted to announce, and I guess we'll shake hands on this.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So next we'll have a Q&A session.
Do you want to show the visualization of what we can
I actually showed it when you were speaking.
Okay, so it's already there. Okay, cool.
We can rerun it.
Very good.
Multitasking.
Yes, now the QA session, everybody has been waiting. May I please ask Henrik Roonemaa here to moderate this part of the session. Henrik is a technology journalist in Estonia and standing 2 feet on the ground, and I think you have also many questions prepared. So Henrik, please, and can you moderate the session? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I was asked to help out here. You can ask questions in English. Kui keegi tahab eesti keeles küsida, siis ma tõlgin. Jos joku haluaa kysyä suomeksi, niin minä ymmärrän vähän suomea ja Peter varmasti myös.
Minäkin vähän, joo.
So let's get this started. I want to see a lot of hands. Yes, please.
Kristjan Aant, Estonian Entrepreneurship University of Applied Sciences. You're quite convincing about the funding and technological aspect. So let's assume that the funding is okay and it can be built. What are the key public sector decisions that need to be made, the people that need to sign off on something in Estonia and in Finland regarding planning, environment, whatever, like the top 5 decisions that need to be made?
Okay, I have to repeat this question into this microphone because we have a lot of live listeners. So the question was, what would be the key public sector decisions that we need to make in order for this project to go on? So
So I think actually, so very short answer is that nobody knows, which is not a good answer. But actually, we already, like last year, together with Pöyry, we created a long list of all the different planning permits, environmental permits. So there's, I remember now, it's like 30 or 40 at least. So it's like actually a pretty big like slide presentation of all the different permits needed, and that's just like on the Finnish side. So I expect to be like similar number of permits that we need here on like the Estonian side. Okay, then we also identified that the permits that will take the longest time to get are actually the ones related to the environment. So okay, the good news there is that if you look at the tunnel itself, I mean we're going, of course, below the sea and below the bottom. So we're not like even like connecting with the water or the sea life with the tunnel itself. So it's kind of like fairly straightforward in that regard. But then when we're building a tunnel that is actually over 100 kilometers in length, one thing that kind of like happens, and especially when we do 2 tunnels 70 meters in diameter, you end up with a lot of material, a lot of rock. So that is also typically in a project like this, that is actually a bit of a problem. So it's actually, you need somewhere to put all of that material. And in our project, we also then for kind of like safety and security, you need to have like exits and things like that. So, and also again, to be able to complete the project in kind of like less than 5 years, we need to drill in several directions. So we then need to have these islands anyway. So we'll have a slightly bigger island on the Finnish side, and then a smaller one slightly off the coast here in Tallinn. And the bigger island will be, and we already saw some of the visualization, all that it's 1 square kilometer, 15 kilometers outside of Helsinki. So that, of course, has some impact on the environment. And that was also the discussion that we started last year, and as I mentioned, we met with Minister Kimmo Tiilikainen on Friday and his team to discuss that. And the feedback that we got from the Ministry of the Environment in Finland, that they are actually super happy that we went there early last year without having kind of like a plan that, okay, the island will be here and this is what it will look like. That we are actually doing a very collaborative kind of like planning process, that we're involving the ministry, the different people working there, so we can, we have flexibility on where exactly the island, where it makes sense to put it so that we minimize the impact on the environment. So kind of like a long story short, I think that we are making good progress. We have very good support, and I expect to see the same here, like Estonian side. I think that again we need to start looking at kind of like what makes sense and where we put kind of like the island here on like the Estonian side, and what impact and how we minimize the impact on the environment. Then when I started by saying that nobody knows, so there's also a lot of discussion about who exactly we need to involve besides, of course, Finland and Estonia, and then like Helsinki, Espoo, Vantaa, city of Tallinn, and we have in Finland we have something called Uudenmaan Liitto, which is like southern Finland, and here I guess you have like the Harju region, and so there's quite a few different players involved on both sides. Plus then we all know that there's a lot of debate, if some people like east of us want to like run some gas under the bay and stuff like that, it leads to all kinds of discussion. So kind of like we expect to have to talk to our friends in Russia and Sweden and so on. So this is also something that was a bit like unclear to the people at the ministry as well, that who exactly and what. So I think that there's some like open discussions, because this is a project that is a bit different of previous collaboration projects between Finland and Estonia. So there are no like, okay, this is how we always build tunnels, because we haven't before. So I think that again, and what I always say that we're really approaching this as any startup would approach it, meaning that we deal with the problems when they occur. So we're not making them into huge problems before they are problems. I think this is something that is very important. So also here that why we're pushing this schedule, that we want to have this done in 5 years and we want to start this year, because we don't want to get into this mode that, it might happen sometime in the 30s and there's no rush. So there's no rush, but we want to move very fast. And I think this is something that is very important. And already over the year and a half that we've been talking now about the tunnel, and I mean this event today is a fantastic example of that now the mindset has changed completely. I always use the example that we work very closely with the kind of like the official like feasibility study project and the team there, and they said that they had huge problems on the Finnish side, even attracting these companies to participate in the project, because they say that that's some kind of utopian like dream, and we don't want to be associated with those kind of things because we are a serious company. But guess what? Now they're all standing in line and they want to be part of the project, because now people actually believe that yes, this will be done in the 2020s and not sometimes in the distant future. So I think that again, we have a lot of permits that we need to get, and I think that is now like the most time critical thing. Then the funding and all of that, it's not like we need the full 15 billion, you know, like day one. It actually, we have already built kind of like also a plan together with Pöyry and A-insinöörit and the consortium now, like how much funding we need at any given time and like the staffing and all of that. So yeah, we're building the more detailed plan kind of like as we speak. And the idea with these events, as I said, every month we want to get together, we will share progress then on like where we're at and what is happening. So the idea is to be totally transparent and very, very open. And we, again, like with the planning, the reason we want to announce that is that we actually want to engage people in the design, in the planning. And we have already seen great kind of like input. We've gotten a lot of kind of like new ideas from just like general public and companies all over the planet actually. So it's kind of like moving according to plan.
Quick follow-up. Has the Prime Minister of Finland made any public endorsement for this project?
Several. Like just last week there was a big article where he said that he said in Finnish that kyllähän meidän pitää tämä tunneli saada aikaiseksi. So we need to make this tunnel happen. So yes.
Yes, actually, I was very happy of that statement, and I think we need to still kind of point out that he did not name what kind of tunnel and what kind of premises. He was just saying that this interconnection is needed. And he was talking about the financing also, that there will be private financing, and he was very happy about that as well. So I think that his statement was extremely positive and balanced.
And our President Niinistö, when we had this celebration of like Finland and Estonia 200 in Helsinki last year, we had both presidents there, and actually our president said that hopefully in the future we'll actually be able to get together by using the tunnel. So I think that's we had kind of like presidents from both countries, and I know that there has been discussions between Sipilä and Ratas about this, and we have the upcoming meeting. So I think that on that side, we have had a lot of very good, very positive discussions. So I think that is, the problems are not kind of like on the public side. It's more about now getting the different permits and all of that in place. And of course, I'm sure we'll run into all kinds of challenges kind of like during the project, but that's kind of like how these things go.
Okay, more questions? Back there, I see a question.
The Estonian Parliament. I think one of the permits you have to get is from the people and their representatives. So I am definitely for your project. Great that you're here. Thanks for the speech. What's your strategy in actually talking to the both parliaments that will have to make these decisions? Because I think it has been stated many times that when building the Malmö-Copenhagen connection, actually the hardest part was the politicians. So
yeah. So the question was, you probably need the politicians to agree, both parliaments, what are you doing to achieve this?
Also, we have elections coming up here in Estonia in 1.5 years. It would be a great time to talk to politicians to get this inter-party programs also, so that people know who they vote for, if they are for or
Okay, so the politicians, how do you woo them over?
Yeah, I think that I mean we have actually briefed. Kind of like there is a group in the Estonian Parliament that is kind of like for the tunnel. So we have briefed the group, and in the Finnish Parliament we don't have like an official like tunnel group or anything like that, but we have briefed kind of like unofficial tunnel group or whatever it would be called. So I think that again, I think just like the same kind of approach as this event here, that kind of like having a very open discussion with everybody. I mean, not just the politicians, but actually like the people. So I think that is something that is kind of like very much part of our strategy, and I think that again we haven't really had any like opposition, you know, against kind of like the tunnel plan. I think that it's more about then of course when people think that now this is going to be, you know, like a massive part of the government budget on like both sides. I mean, of course, you know, even as a taxpayer, you know, who wouldn't be concerned, and that's why we wanted to make very clear that the intent here is to run this as a private project and not kind of like go for funding from either government or the EU or something like that. And I think also then, I mean, there has been some statements by like the EU that never going to happen and things like that. But I would again, we have also talked to the Commission and the Commissioner of is it like communication or traffic, so Bullish, and I think that she was, at least in our discussions, very positive. But again, of course, you have to have the official EU statements that are maybe sometimes different. But I don't think that we don't expect like massive problems on that side. And I think also when you are open and transparent and kind of like you share the progress like we're doing today, I think then when people know what is going on, then it's much easier to kind of like get engaged and kind of like be supportive. So I think that is kind of like the strategy. So again, we want to engage with the politicians and engage with the people, and I think that is our strategy to kind of like make this happen. And hopefully we're already kind of like well underway with the project before your elections. But of course. We don't mind if it's like part of the discussion, because I think it's important that we discuss these things openly, both sides of kind of like the Bay Area. And this is actually one thing that, again, why we're here. I think that the tunnel is just an enabler, and of course it's a very important enabler. Was already, like Martin mentioned, like the fact that, okay, you invest €1 below ground, there's €10 above. So that means that if we have 15 billion go into the tunnel, that means that we will have real estate development, in Helsinki and Tallinn for 150 billion. And that sounds like a pretty crazy like amount of money. But of course, it's not like 1 year and it's like boom. It's like over a longer period of time. But I think that these are the kind of things that, again, they might sound like crazy amounts and crazy, projects. But this is, again, we are, in a very global, very open, very competitive environment, and our competition is not like Stockholm or Amsterdam or someplace like that. I mean, we're competing with the likes of Tokyo and Shanghai and Beijing and what have you. So I think that is something that we also, it's just about being a bit more ambitious and again, as I mentioned there like many times, that we should leverage the superior geographic location of Helsinki and Tallinn, that we are really at the heart of Eurasia. So we're ideally situated to now capture massive growth when you look at the global picture. So that's very important.
Yeah, I just follow up that I think the question has it's not if anymore, it's how and when.
Yes.
I think, and that's been a real big change, at least seeing the media and people's reactions in Finland for the last 18 months.
Yes.
So the one question has moved to two questions, but they're completely different now.
Totally, and I think one thing also maybe, and maybe good to address also, that get a lot of questions about China, and shouldn't we be like concerned about that, and what are their intents and things like that. And I think that that's also maybe one part of that people are typically afraid and scared of things that they don't understand, and like you might get this impression that, oh, the Chinese are coming and they're buying everything, and there's always kind of like that kind of. But I think that what is very important, again, I mean, we happen to be the closest neighbor in Europe of China, of Japan, of India. So again, the geography works in our advantage. And I think that also, if you look at what happened last year, I mean, President Xi, when he was on his way to meet with Trump, he stopped by in Helsinki, again, because it makes sense, it's like halfway there. So geography works in our advantage. And then, of course, we happen to have very straightforward, uncomplicated kind of like relationship between Finland and China, and also between Estonia and China. I mean, in fact, actually, as we speak, we had 2 pandas land in Helsinki and going to the Ähtäri zoo. And okay, pandas, those of you who follow like China and the diplomacy, it's not everybody that gets pandas. So it's kind of like, like it's important. But I think that it's also in China they have this Yilu, so the one belt, one road, or Belt and Road project, so kind of like the new Silk Road. And this is actually very, very much aligned with the new Silk Road. So we happen to be also there in between China and Europe. So it makes perfect sense looking at kind of like the world from a Chinese perspective that this is just like a small part of their Belt and Road initiative. I mean, if we've been following, they've been investing more than 50 billion into Kazakhstan. And I always say that, I mean, if you look at Finland and Estonia, and nothing wrong about like Kazakhstan, I mean, it's a great place as well, but I think that politically Finland and Estonia are like slightly more stable. So if you invest in between Helsinki and Tallinn, it's probably a bit lower risk than you know, putting 50 billion you know, into Kazakhstan. I mean, of course, Borat and his friends are all very nice people, but still, I think that there's that angle as well. So I think, and also, you know, even getting then, you know, the investment, I mean, it could also come from other places. When you have a good business case, I'm sure that we will have, and we have already been contacted by Japanese players that are very interested in participating in the project. And if you follow kind of like Japan, you just had the Japanese Prime Minister visiting here in Estonia. So I think that, again, great example of the relationship that we have here from the finest Bay Area to not only China, but to Japan, to India. And, you know, we are a very natural destination for them when they come to Europe, because we're, you know, ideally positioned here on this planet. So I think that's, again, important to keep in mind.
Okay, we have a question there, and then we're moving there.
Johan said more practical issue. We are here in Ülemiste on top of a cliff, on the verge of a cliff.
Yes.
Do you plan to have the station an underground station or an above ground station?
Underground.
Okay, very good. Have you given a thought to having an underground station also near the city center?
So yeah, the question is whether there will be an underground station in the city center of Tallinn, I guess, or yeah.
Yeah. So right now the plan is to have only 4 stations, and that's again to maximize the kind of like the speed and again like the travel time. So the design is for 20 minutes between Helsinki Airport and Ülemiste and like Tallinn Airport. So that is why we have 4 stations in the current plans: Ülemiste, the island, Otaniemi, Keilaniemi, and the airport. And on the Finnish side, I mean, next week we'll present kind of like a bigger plan then for like how we maximize the throughput of the Finnish like rail network. So not just like the tunnel, but like all of Finland. And also our ambassador mentioned that this also like links to the Arctic railway and up to like Kirkenes and those areas. So we're looking at like not just the tunnel, but the bigger picture. I think that's important. Yeah, and it will be underground station. So again, building tunnels actually gets less and less expensive all the time. So there's new technology to make the tunnels happen faster and all of that. And it doesn't make sense to do the rail above ground. I mean, that would have massive impact on like the city of Tallinn. Same thing on like the Finnish side with Helsinki and Espoo and Vantaa and like all of that, you know, getting the planning permits above ground, then we probably wouldn't even be ready like in the 30s, but maybe 40s or 50s. I mean, that can take like forever. So making this happen underground makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's also on the Finnish side, all the stations are underground, and then the rail will come up sometime after the airport and then connecting with kind of like rest of the network. And the same thing we expect to have happen here, that kind of like the train will then kind of like come above ground a bit later. But there are no like detailed plans on like where exactly, but that's kind of like the idea. And I mean, we also have people here from like who are experts on the geology like below. So coming from Finland, there's like solid bedrock all the way to Tallinn, and then we hit a bit of sand and clay. Technically, you know, it's just like different, so we can solve that. You need to put like some concrete like rings and stuff in, but it's fairly easy to build. And so I think that yeah, again, from like technical perspective, we don't see massive problems. Then we also typically get the question that what about, you know, like then the actual like rail, like the standard that in Baltic states and Finland and Russia and China we use the Finnish standard, and then Europe they use the Euro standard. So for us we can put in both kind of like rail standards if needed, but we will need to change like the standard at somewhere. So might be that we then have that change happen here. So like wherever the rail kind of like hits the ground and all that. But we can put in both. I mean that's a minor like cost. So it's not having a kind of like big impact on the project overall.
Okay. Here's a question.
Peter Vesterbacka, Vice President of the Estonian Architects Association. I'm really glad that you brought up the verdict speed, both in terms of reporting and also the tunnel project, because the time is sometimes much more valuable than those euros we are spending. So, and it brings me back to actually the follow-up to the previous question that a couple of years ago, the Estonian Architects Association, together with our Finnish colleagues, of course, we made a workshop, really serious one, involving architects, city planners, scientists, even some parliament members, and we investigated the city planning and how this tunnel and this enormous potential could be actually realized. And actually all these working groups came using different city planning strategies, both empirical and scientific. They reached down to the point that in Tallinn you need a station in the center of the city because of the way how the Tallinn city is planned. Because if you put the station in the center, then actually what happens, you suddenly get all the city. People living in Mustamäe, people living in Õismäe, within their 5-10 minutes they can be in the city center and then to the Helsinki. And also this actually, if you will have the two stations, both in city centers and for instance in Ülemiste, you would solve the biggest challenge of the Ülemiste city and this upcoming part here, which is the connection with the rest of the city, which is quite loose at the moment. Will you consider also the more central station location?
Okay, so another voice from the Estonian architects to please consider a station in the center of Tallinn because our city is shaped a bit weirdly.
Yeah, so first of all, not an expert on Tallinn. So I mean, I'm kind of like visiting like more and more, but I think that again, that is the kind of input that we want to have. But I think also like on the Finnish side, very similar discussion, and actually like we have Olli here who have built like overall plan on how we make the whole system more efficient. And I think that this again, our design calls for, like what we had there, that we want to create gravity, and we also want to enable kind of like housing for 200,000 and more people to happen. So that was again with the station area, like here in Ülemiste, that we think that it makes sense to do that because here you have the space, and then also, of course, it happens to be the location of the airport. I think that there are also other ways to enable the connectivity between the city center and Ülemiste. I think, and also we need to take into consideration then, like Rail Baltic, and whenever that happens, I think, again, we don't want to create a dependency between the tunnel and Rail Baltic because, time, so we want to be fast, and Rail Baltic has maybe not been the fastest project on the planet so far. So we don't want to kind of like create any kind of dependency there. But I think that it's kind of like a bigger question. I don't think that it's just about, okay, let's do more stations. So why I have taken kind of like a very tough stance on like adding stations, because that always slows down the connection. And one thing that we have a example of that in Finland, where we have a rail connection from the airport in Helsinki to the city center, and it takes like half an hour. So pretty much nobody uses it because it stops at like every single possible stop. And I think that many times when we do these projects, you get input that, but couldn't you also like stop in my neighborhood, and then you have like 100 stops and it takes an hour, and then like the whole project is like a waste. So I think that open to entertain any ideas and looking at like how we create the best possible solution, but we also want to be a bit tough on like adding stations and slowing down the connection, because we don't want to end up with the kind of connection that we ended up currently, in Helsinki with the airport, that it's like takes half an hour and nobody uses it. So again, and I would say that nothing has been decided. So again, this is why we wanted to have this event as well, that let's kind of like have an open dialogue and look at kind of like what makes sense. I think that's important. But I think here are thinking now speed and then enabling this growth so that we have room for like 50,000 people in like the Ülemiste area, on the island, in the Otaniemi-Keilaniemi area, and the Helsinki airport area. So I think that those are kind of like important consideration as well. And also I would say here that Tallinn today, you also need to prepare for like much faster growth. Same thing is actually the case in Helsinki.
It would be enabled with the central location of the station.
So
Okay.
can you put 50,000 new people in the center of Tallinn? That would like destroy the center of Tallinn. No, you can. Okay.
Okay, there's a short comment and then I see a question.
Yeah, what we are seeing now is a total change of the architecture of mobility. So you must wait and see what kind of other ways of making the missing connections, because there are plenty. And I'm very proud of the mobility as a service concept, which is created in Finland, and it's working there. I've been piloting customer for 1.5 years, and it's great. So be open-minded and understand that in the physical world is happening the same what happened in the digital world. We will have a diversity of mobility, and the means are much above what we have today. So I would love to think this with you, because we have been thinking that for a long time in Finland, and I think we have something to offer also to solve those problems.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is actually very important. So I'll just share it with you, what happened. So the first meeting we had in Shanghai with our Chinese partners, and then we're talking about the tunnel and the fact that we're planning for the 70-meter, like in diameter tunnels. And then they were like asking us that why. And of course, the most important thing is that you are not building a tunnel for 10 years. It's for like hundreds of years. So in 2050, who knows if we'll have this like mega loop technology that it's like close to teleportation or something, and we need to put something into the tunnel. And then so I think that our thinking has been that okay, let's make the tunnel big enough to put in lots of different things. And we actually have a lot of input and a lot of ideas on what could actually go there besides the fast rail. We started with the fast rail as a starting point because there is no need to introduce like additional technology risk. Like with Martin, for example, we've discussed like, okay, what about Hyperloop? Yeah, what about Hyperloop? I mean, we want to have people moving back and forth like in 24, not in like 34. So, like Hyperloop might be ready to be deployed in the 30s or 40s, or if ever. I mean, so we'll see. So that is kind of like one consideration. But then one thing that then when the Chinese said, okay, but you could put cars into the tunnel as well. Yes, we could put cars into the tunnel, but I say that if you look at all the major cities in Europe, Helsinki included, I don't know about the stats in Tallinn, the driver license penetration is going down. Young people are not getting a driver's license anymore. Why? Because they don't need it. I mean, again, like Olli mentioned, the mobility as a service, that you don't need to own a car to get around. I mean, it's the same thing that if I fly to London, it's not like I pack my car. I mean, I can use a taxi or I can use Uber or whatever. I mean, in Finland soon we'll have that as well, so it's pretty cool. But anyway, so you know, great job here in Tallinn on like getting the regulation in place like much faster. But I think that again, what we told our Chinese friends that okay, this is happening, so we don't need to put cars into the tunnel. If somebody insists on bringing their car over, you still have the ferries, you can do that, but I mean, there will be mobility as a service, both cities, and what we intend to do, all the kind of like the feeder traffic, I mean, already with the metro and all that in Finland, you will have autonomous vehicles much faster than most people actually realize. So this will also change, and I think in the discussion here with like, okay, Ülemiste and city center and all that, you will have a lot of diversity, a lot of new alternatives for people to getting around in the city. And all the cities, like the 50,000 people, like neighborhoods and all that, are designed to be walkable, cyclable. You don't need to own a car. And that is kind of like changing the environment and the cities completely. I think this is something that, again, we're not building this for like a few years, but it's like 100 years. And we had a very good discussion when we came over here on the ferry that again, if you look at the most popular places in the city, I mean here in Tallinn as well, these are the places that were built when people were walking around. Those are the best places, not the places that, you know, like happened when people had to use cars to get around and all of that. And this is something that you have to keep in mind. So we need to build cities and environments like that. But anyway, so what the Chinese said when I brought this up, that, oh, wow, fantastic, could we bring that thinking to Shanghai as well? I said, of course, we want to do that for like every city in China. So this again an example of the kind of opportunities that this creates, that we will create the future of mobility here, like we did, you know, like when it comes to like mobile networks and all that, but we'll do that for transportation and we'll bring that to the rest of the world, creating massive opportunities for companies here in the finest Bay Area.
Thank you for that last comment. I think you need to bring this modern vision of transportation to Tallinn first, because I think it hasn't really caught on here yet. But sure. One thing I learned, I came to see you last week as well, in Helsinki, and I learned from a member of the audience that city councils in Helsinki area, in the greater metropolitan area, can take up to 40% of the value of the increase of the land. Yeah. And I think the big debate to be had in Tallinn, which I hope you can help stir up, because you are much pretty good at creating the buzz around you, is how do we make sure that a system is put in place in Tallinn before this extra 50 billion of value is increased here, to make sure that it's not just taken away by greedy speculators, but it's put back into redesigning the city, into redesigning the centre to make it pedestrian friendly, which it isn't right now. Yeah. And to capture that value, we have to change the whole system.
But this is super important, and the thing is that what we should start thinking, that it's like Helsinki and Tallinn, one metropolitan area. So if there are differences, then we should look at, okay, sometimes we have a better solution in Helsinki, sometimes we have a better solution in Tallinn, but we should make it one solution that is like the best solution. And I think that again, on both sides we can learn a lot. And I think that again, that was kind of like the point I wanted to make earlier, that tunnel or not, this is what we need to think about. I mean, we already have like almost 12 million people going back and forth every year. So how do we make that easier? I mean, it's again like we should have one ticketing system for like the public transportation. We should have the same mobility as a service, not just in Helsinki, but in Tallinn. I mean, if we really buy into this, that it's one metropolitan area, it's like totally kind of like inconceivable, and it's like stupid if I would have to have a separate or different kind of like ticket or like system in, you know, like Espoo, I want to go to Eastern Helsinki. You know, it's again, so the same thing here, that we should have consistency in everything between Helsinki and Tallinn, and we should pick the best solution. And I think that again, like this, you know, the cities and municipalities in Finland, they have And it's, I'm not sure that if it's always like a fantastic model that they've learned how to capture the value of when they do planning for new like neighborhoods. But yeah, it's one approach to take, that they see a lot of return, and that's why they're doing it. But our planning processes in Finland are not maybe the benchmark for the world. I mean, we can improve a lot, but maybe that is one area where, again, when we compare notes on both sides of the bay, that we can learn and we can become better together. I think that's something that we need to do, but this is exactly why we're here. The discussion we want to have is that let's start thinking about Helsinki and Tallinn, one metropolitan area, and then we start like one by one removing these kind of like unnecessary differences in kind of like daily life. But I think that said, we don't want to kind of like make it, like one McDonald's type of experience. I mean, there's also richness in diversity. So I mean, it's fantastic to come to Tallinn. It's fantastic, like Old Town. We don't have anything like that in Helsinki. Okay, maybe in Helsinki when we then have some different things that you don't have here. And I think that there is absolutely a lot of value and a lot of richness in that diversity. So let's kind of like treasure that as well. And there are many things that we need to do. I mean, one thing that I think that we should have media that covers the metropolitan area in Finnish and Estonian. I mean, this is again so that you can follow what is happening on both sides. It's not like two discussions, two dialogues, but it's one dialogue. So there are a lot of these kind of things that we need to think about again. One metropolitan area, what is needed.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Yeah.
Lihtsalt info selle kohta, et 7. veebruaril tuleb siia Tallinnasse küllaga Helsingi linnapea esimest korda, ja kõik see, mida nüüd siin küsiti ja vastati, tuleb kindlasti arutusele. Ja me peab ka silmas pidama, et Tallinna Helsingi linnade vaheline kõrgetasemeline dialoog on olnud viimasel ajal teatutel põhjustel võrdlemisi nõrk. Aga hetkel asjad on paigas. Aitäh.
Juuri näin.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, Peter. You're a phenomenal speaker. It's 12 o'clock exactly.
Thank you. It's perfect.
Almost on the second. And now the closing words.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Henrik, and thank you for all the questions. Our time here is up, but there's time for networking, and I know that Peter will give some interviews. So there's some media waiting for you. So there's coffee, water, tea outside, and feel free to drink and network with this important topic. Thank you.